When the doctors asked him if he wanted to jump into the frying pan, Mateo, in a severe condition, knew it meant they wanted to try a new treatment. Mateo agreed because he was tired of being locked up in the institution all day and wanted to travel to the lab. More importantly, he had lost a crucial part of himself when he stepped on a landmine 11 years ago, and he still held on to the hope of recovering it. The doctors assured him that the new treatment, which had to be administered far from the city to avoid electrical interference, had worked well on animals. If Mateo signed the consent form, he could find his way home again. Home felt like a distant dream, but a comforting one. Once, when he was a small child at the county fair, Mateo had wandered away from his mother's hand while she was busy with cotton candy. He had been blinded by the bright lights and overwhelmed by the noise, eventually asking a tall cowboy for help. Back then, home was not just a pleasant dream, but the fear of losing it was a real nightmare. Now, missing an essential part of himself, and with the chance to find it again without returning to the war-torn jungles, Mateo signed the form and climbed into the institution's van with a doctor and a driver who oddly resembled a cow. Both wore important-looking badges. Mateo watched the bridges and buildings pass by as the van made its way through traffic toward the edge of the city. He hadn't been outside in 11 years and stared at the tall apartment buildings with balconies that held people. "Why don't they jump?" Mateo asked the doctor. "They're not missing a part of themselves," the doctor replied. That made sense to Mateo. He knew something in his mind had been blown into the treetops all those years ago when he walked through the jungle with his brothers. He wasn't sure what it had been, though. Maybe he had been a painter before the war, or perhaps a carpenter. The only thing he knew for certain was the faint feeling of faith running through his veins. Somewhere, he believed, there was a God who smiled. As they left the city and drove through fields of corn and wheat, Mateo thought about something he had read long ago. Cultivation is the most vital labor. "Yes," said the doctor. "But why is that?" Mateo asked. "Well, we all have to eat, I suppose," the doctor responded. Satisfied with the answer, Mateo leaned back and chewed on a memory from the war, before the landmine had taken his life as he had known it. He remembered standing around a fire with a group of soldiers, tossing live shells into the flames, the challenge being not to flinch when they exploded. One guy had been hit in the jaw, but had made it home with the help of medical evacuation, and was now back to a simple life, though he still had to deal with surgeries and a dull job. Those were the lucky ones, Mateo thought as the van climbed into the mountains. Some soldiers never made it back. Others came home missing limbs or organs, or worse, without any memory of who they once were. If he had to guess, Mateo would say that he had volunteered to protect his way of life. But since he had lost that life, he wasn't sure it had been worth protecting. The doctor tapped Mateo on the arm. "We're almost there." Mateo nodded, ready to find what he had lost. They arrived at a gate, went through security, and entered the testing facility, which was on a hill and looked like an old ranch. Mateo thought he heard an animal. "Do you have cows?" he asked. The long shadows of the afternoon could hide almost anything. "It's just the wind," said the doctor. "We'll start in the morning." The next day, the doctor came for Mateo early. After a light breakfast, they sat outside on a bench. The sun was shining. "I wasn't honest with you," said the doctor. "When?" "At the institution, when I said the animal tests went well." "What happened?" "Some of them died." "The sun feels good," said Mateo. "Do you understand?" "Not really." "You could die here, Mateo." "So why?" "I want to help you." Mateo nodded. That made sense too. He imagined it would make his God smile. The way things were, he wasn't really living anyway. At the institution, they unlocked his door in the morning and locked it again at night. The food was predictable, and until yesterday, he hadn't seen a real tree in 11 years. "That's okay, Doc," said Mateo. Maybe I'll find my missing piece. The doctor stood up, his face serious but softened by the weight of what was unspoken. Let's get started. As they walked toward the lab, Mateo lifted his face to the sky. The clouds drifted like soft, pillowed kingdoms, remnants of a gentler past, while a hawk soared above, circling with grace. For a moment, the warmth of the sun and the endless blue sky made him feel lighter, as if he was part of something bigger than the pain and loss he carried. Maybe, just maybe, he thought, this journey wasn't about finding the piece he had lost, but about discovering something new, something more.